know how the
We'll,
procedure goes.
we'll let us take care of the remaining items that are left on the consent calendar, and then we'll discuss that one. Okay, you right?
Pulling it?
Yeah, we're pulling.
You don't have to pull it
We
to
don't-
ask questions, but if
right.
you want to, that's okay.
Okay, but
Let's go ahead and pull it.
Joe
then.
Rivero, you have a question?
Do we have to approve the request at this time, also for the Atwater High
It's
School?
mine.
It's part of the consent.
No, it's,
Right.
so, well, even though it was pulled, we don't have to, okay, vote separately.
Check-
Okay.
Number
I
three
wanted
was
to
not,
check.
number three was not pulled. That was
Oh,
just a
okay.
comment from the public.
From the public,
The one
okay.
that was pulled was item number 2
And 6.
and 6. So we are voting on items number 1, 3, 1 and 3, right, ma'am? Because we don't,
1, 3, 4, 5.
1, 3, 4, 5. Okay, I'll entertain a motion to.
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Rivero.
Second.
Joe Rivero, and seconded by Mr. Larry Bergman. Yes. Call for the question?
Bergman,
Yes.
Joe Rivero,
Yes.
Jeff Rivero,
Yes.
Fall.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Okay, item number 2, re-adopting the conflict of interest code. City Clerk Del Real, is that going to be yours? And Mr. Jeff Rivero, what were the questions that you had on this item?
I was wondering if you could go ahead and explain that into detail for us.
Local agencies are required to do biannual review of the conflict of interest. So this year, we took a look at it, the city attorney's office and myself, and we made some minor changes to what we already had. Basically, we changed or updated page 5, which is the Appendix B. And under public officials and members, I added all of the various boards that the city council also serve as, such as the Fire Protection District, that was not included 2 years ago, so we made sure that was current. Let's see, also on page 6, let's see, I added consultants to the designated positions. Oops, let's see, and 6. Oh, also on page 6, we added the new Community Development and Resources Commission and deleted the Planning Commission. So there are minor changes in just to reflect what we currently have.
Okay, on the changing of what you're doing to this conflict, it's my opinion that we are shrinking down 3 commissions into 1, and we're basically taking 15 people and shoving it down to, or decreasing it down to 7 people. So I just wanted to make sure that this didn't change. My opinion is that you should only serve on 1 board, especially since we are decreasing it by such a large number. So are we changing any of the language that would allow a person to serve on more than 1 board?
Not with the conflict of interest.
No, this is not.
It's just updating the current positions or classifications that we currently have.
Thank you.
Any other questions of this? Item number 2? Councilman Joe Rivero?
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. It was but just a month or so ago, maybe 2, where I brought up the issue of campaign contributions and voting if there was a conflict of interest. And this right here, I'm seeing this resolution and talking about a conflict of interest, but I see no teeth, as Merced has, as many of the other cities have. If you do violate the conflict of interest, you're just saying, okay, there can be no conflict of interest, but I don't see any limits if someone is violating this conflict of interest. That was what was, as I say, brought up a while back, and I'm glad to see something is being brought up about the conflict of interest now. But so someone violates this conflict of interest right here. If as I was told at that previous meeting, is that they can violate a conflict of interest here in Atwater because we don't have a statute like Merced and some of the other cities have. Why are we doing this?
City Attorney? Do we
If
have
there's
a-
no teeth to it,
Do we have a,
as we have from other cities.
The teeth in any of this is in the Political Reform Act or state law that governs this. If you have specific information from other communities as to additional penalties that they impose or different penalties that they impose in their ordinance or in their it wouldn't be in their conflict of interest code necessarily, but if they have a provision in their municipal code that has different penalties, greater penalties, that deviate from state law and there's a good reason for it, bring them to me and I'll take a look at them.
I think that one of the things that we did have was when you looked at some of them, like were said, where if they receive so much money from an entity, let's say, let's just use a fictional group that gives them money, and then they go ahead and vote. If we don't say there's a conflict of interest there, then they can go ahead and vote, which I couldn't see that. So when we're talking about conflicts of interest, I still have concerns. That's good that we're still talking about the resolution, but the council, I think it was 3-2 voted no, not to put it away indefinitely, about looking at campaign contributions, which can affect the city, and I believe that in the government code there's something about receiving funds from individuals. Now, you're the expert, so if we can bring this back with some more clarification, but to me, there needs to be some kind of teeth in it. Like I said, the other cities, when I brought that up in the past. So I don't know if you need more time to take a look at it, or if that's the case, I'd be happy to bring this back at a later date.
Well, again, from staff standpoint, this resolution deals with the Form 700 requirements and not necessarily with penalties for violating conflict of interest laws that are a matter of state law. And again, staff believes that the remedies for violation having to do with conflict of interest are already established in existing law. There's no need to supplement that and potentially confuse anybody who prosecutes one of those types of cases. But again, if I've heard about other municipalities requiring disclosure of campaign contributions, and that's something we can talk about when this council has talked about. But remedies for violation of conflict of interest laws are a matter of state law, can be enforced either at the state level or through the local district attorney's office, and so, or through the attorney general's office. And so staff does not believe that for purposes of this resolution that's in front of you tonight, it's fairly limited in scope, that there needs to be any further revisions. But again, if you have other specific ordinances from other municipalities, certainly provide those to staff and to my office, and we'd be happy to look and see if we can supplement in some way.
And as you said, matter of state law. So is there nothing in the state laws that states, involved with this, on this code, that if a person receives so much money from a group that you have to step down from the vote?
Yeah, the Political Reform Act, Section 87, 100, and 103, say that a public official cannot make or participate in a decision in which they have an economic interest. And that economic interest is defined through about an 8-part test, which I won't bore the audience or you with. But there is a significant body of law that's developed around that code and a set of regulations that implement it, that talk about distance from property lines, sources of income, be they campaign contributions, be they pay for work received or work done. All of that is a matter of state law. It's very heavily regulated. The FPPC can impose fines. The Attorney General can prosecute. It can be done at a state level. It can be done at a local level. There are adequate remedies already there in law that are not necessary to be supplemented by the City of Atwater. And so we're trying to follow and implement a state law at the local level. We're doing what we think is appropriate and to that extent under the Atwater Municipal Code. And this resolution is in furtherance of that.
Councilman Jeff Rivera.
If it's all right, I'd like to make a motion to have this brought back to the council at our next scheduled meeting, and have a couple different cities of what they have on their logbooks, so that way the city of Atwater can look at it and move forward with what we feel is best for the city of Atwater.
Yeah, again, and I wish you wait for a second to the motion.
Councilman Joe Rivera?
And I would like it brought to my attention, even though it might be boring to some, I would like all that information that you were talking about, the 8 different areas. I would like to see those before I make any decision right here.
I think the motion died for a lack of a second, and I think the key thing here is, and what we're trying to find here is that this is meeting the code, the updating of the 700 code. We're not trying to expand it or anything. We're just trying to bring this up to date. And then if you have ideas, give them to the city attorney, and he can see where they're at. But right now, my understanding is that this resolution is just to update the present set of 700, what? The filers. The required filers. This is all that this is required. This is all what we're trying to do. So that, and so with that, I make a motion that we approve the conflict of interest code as presented. Is there a second to that motion?
I will second it, but I just would like clarification. I mean, the councilman they both have some valid issues. Just to make it clear to them that what we're passing here has nothing to do with what they're looking for, and we can still pursue what they're
Right.
looking for with the adoption of this, correct?
Yeah.
Yeah, if it's directed towards staff, yes. This is merely to update the conflict of interest code with respect to who has to file and under what circumstances, what positions have to file. And if you look at Section 2 of the resolution, it specifically incorporates all of the provisions of state law and the Code of Regulations, so that all of that and anything promulgated by the Fair Political Practices Commission, all of those remedies are already cooked into the cake, if you will. They're all part of our conflict of interest code by reference. And so we don't have to go through the whole process of outlining everything that state law does, because it's layered. This is part of a layering process where they have state laws implementing regulations and then local ordinances and resolutions that implement it. So that's why we didn't feel it was appropriate to spell out all of those, but rather to incorporate them by reference. That's what most of the cities are doing, unless they have their own specific things that they add to it. Again, there are municipalities that do require disclosure in different circumstances, more restrictive circumstances than the state. This council has discussed that before. It can certainly discuss it again. And if there are provisions of state law, or of local ordinances rather, that would be beneficial in the council's eyes to add to our code, we can do that after this. We can, it doesn't preclude us from adopting this tonight.
Call for the question.
Berkman,
Yes.
Jeff Rivero,
No?
Joe Rivero,
No.
Fall.
Yes.
Motion fails.
At this point, then, the City of Atwater does not have a current conflict of interest code. And so staff will attempt to address the issues raised tonight and bring this back to a subsequent meeting with the full council.
Okay. Thank you.
So let me clarify that. So the city of Atwater at this point, and going all the way back, never had a conflict of interest code.
We have a conflict of interest
So
code.
we still
don't-
have that we're
Correct.
we're
We don't
under.
have an updated
Okay.
one that follows
Right.
the.
Right, I wanted to make that clear,
Yeah.
that we currently have one, but we're not updating it at this time.
Right, but we're required to amend biennial. And we have till the end of this year, so we were trying to get it done in advance, but we have time to bring it back and before a full council.
Right. And I appreciate it to give direction to bring back all that additional information to.
Sure.
And I'd really like to know why some cities have these other things in to theirs, expanded their conflict of interest, and why this council has not decided in the past. And so I'd like to see why City of Merced does and many of these other cities do. And have it expanded, which I think is great protection for the voters, the citizens, the people that actually that live here in the city, so that they're making sure that their interests are being protected, not just special interests.
Is it because of the fact that, city attorney, that such as Merced is a charter city versus we're a general law city? Is that one of the reasons?
In some cases, that's the reason. In some cases, it's in response to local conditions, whether there's a local group, maybe it's a group of builders, maybe it's a group of environmentalists, whoever it is, that has a political stronghold in that community, and the council adopts policies to protect the rights of those who aren't in that voting block. I mean, so there's a whole variety of policy reasons why these things happen. The communities go through and adopt these additional restrictions, and in some cases later on revisit them, repeal them. It's usually it's in response to local conditions.
Okay, we have item number 6, a question on it, and the city manager is going to answer the question, because Mr. Pimentel must be at a fire. Chief Pimentel. Sir, what was your question?
Thank you. I was going to ask, in the Audit and Finance Committee meeting, there was a report out on Measure H that I believe it was a little under $150,000 left over after everything that the city has moved forward with for pertaining to Measure H. And I was going to ask, with the fire truck ladder coming in, is there going to be an increase of manpower needed for that ladder truck? And then also, is there going to be an increase for training? Because those are two issues that we'll have to look forward to, especially with the budget being as tight as it is.
There will be an increase in training. At this point in time, there's no increase in staffing,
What's the ballpark figure on training?
about 60,000.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll move on then to item number, Councilman Bergman?
I'm just wondering, can we get a clarification in that amount of training? Why the numbers you're coming up with? Because I know where the training's coming from, and we have personnel within this area that are going to put on the training. The only costs involved, to my knowledge, are going to be the overtime hours to train for the instructor to come in to train the personnel while they're on duty.
Yep. I'll provide that information for the next council meeting.
Thank you. Okay, item number 7, establishing policy for appointment to Merced Mosquito Abatement District Board of Trustees and city boards and commissions and committees. City Attorney Terpstra.
Well, as you see in your staff report, it's recommended that council consider adopting resolution number 2788-14, establishing a policy for appointments to city boards, commissions, and committees, and 2789-14, establishing a policy for appointments to the Mosquito Abatement District Board of Trustees. As you see in the staff report, we provided what we believe in these two resolutions to be a fairly straightforward and common sense approach to making appointments to boards and committees, as including the Mosquito Abatement District Board. Councilmember Rivero at a previous meeting had mentioned the issue of how misdemeanor or felony convictions should be factored into the decision-making process. And in our drafting of the proposed resolutions, we had thought that what was intended was a prohibition on anybody who had a misdemeanor or felony being considered for a board or commission. And I think what the council member intended was that there would be disclosure of a misdemeanor or a felony conviction, and that could be considered by the council, but it certainly isn't a disqualifying event. It's something that just has to be disclosed. And he cited to me a previous example in the community where we found out subsequent to an appointment that somebody had a conviction, and it would have factored into the council's decision-making process. So staff proposes then to revise the two resolutions to delete item I3, but rather to include language that the disclosure of a misdemeanor or felony conviction could be factored into the decision-making process, but would not be a disqualifying event, and staff can insert that language into the resolution. So with those changes in both resolutions, staff, and you have a copy of the application, which would also have to have a small amendment to it at the bottom in the shaded language, because we would change it to make it consistent with the resolution. But with those changes, staff is recommending that you adopt the two resolutions and allow this process to move forward. And I can answer any questions.
Any questions? Councilman Jeff Rivero.
I had 3 questions. One of them is, where would we put in the city's wish to only have a maximum of 1 commission for somebody to be sitting on?
Why didn't we, or could
I
we?
said, where could we interject that? 'Cause I'd like to interject that.
If the council wants to, include that type of provision, we could certainly add it to the resolutions to say that you can't serve on more than one board or commission.
Board or commission? Okay.
Okay, the second question would be, for the questions that we'll be asking for the appointments to our next commission, how can a board member, one of the things I'd like a question on is for a person to be able to explain what background they have for park and recreation, traffic, and planning, because that, since we're condensing them, I'd like to hear from the person applying for it, what their strengths are. So if we can add that to the questionnaire, and
Oh,
maybe,
we already have that one?
but
Background
this would
and
have, this one,
strengths?
yeah, this one would have to, if we went with the old ones, they'd only asked one question, and this application doesn't have it on there, so I was just asking for, how would a city council member have input on the questionnaire that we will supply the night of the interviews?
Will the questionnaires be available before the interviews? Or do they bring them to the interview that night?
We bring them.
Okay. We can certainly clarify on the application itself and ask for that information.
And then the last question for you would be, is it possible to ask for a live scan after we accept somebody on?
Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Any other questions by the council before I open it up to the public? Any questions regards to these two items? Okay, then I'll open it up to the public, and please come forward, and if you have any questions on these two appointments, please come to the podium and state your questions and concerns, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Jim Price again, 3467 Village Woods. I would like to also ask that in addition to boards and commissions, that you would also include committees. That seems to be also one that gets lost on the wayside. At the last City Council meeting, there was a lot of discussion on this particular matter in relationship to the current representative. And I asked the question, but I'd never heard a clear answer as to how, after a letter that was received at the city in October, a 4-to-1 vote in November, and termination by way of the letter that was received in October, that the gentleman that's on there continues to serve and continues to collect money, and actually, well, if there's any votes that have been rendered, how he can still continue to do that, even though that he was found, or anyone in his position would be found to be ineligible. So I'd like to have clarification on that, Madam Mayor, through the city attorney, if possible, or wherever. But by what authority is he still sitting there today after being found to be unqualified for that particular position? And you know, we're spending, from what I recall, $100 a month to pay this person to be on there, and that's money that the taxpayers are putting up that, in my estimation, it has been under false pretense. Thank you.
We consulted their executive director and explained that to him, and we asked him, Mr. Inman, if the person would still be able to serve on his commission, and he said that Mr. Inman said that he would be able to serve until we were able to find a replacement for him. So that was the direction that the executive director from the mosquito abatement told us. City Attorney, do you wish to say any further on that?
No, I don't. Actually, this is not the agenda item that's before the council.
Right.
That's a
Okay.
specific situation that we were dealing with.
Okay, thank you. Council, Joe Rivero, we're still in the public.
Okay.
Is there anybody else
I
in
would
the-
have just wanted a clarification, though,
Okay.
from a question asked by a member of the public is, and I realize that you mentioned, for clarification, that Mr. Inman said that it would be okay for him to serve, but what legal capacity does he understand the law? And that's what my question to our city attorney is, since there was a question, if you could answer that, does he have the right to sit on there if he was never officially appointed?
Yeah, look, we're dealing with an appointed position, and you're dealing with a specific fact situation that is not part of your agenda tonight. It's not in the city's best interest to discuss that aspect of it. That is being resolved, and to comment further on it, where a person is holding a position that he may or may not, we'll find out, be entitled to hold, and in the interim, what's happening in the interim, there's a person that's holding that position, and it's not prudent, I don't think, for the council to weigh in on that, particularly because it's not part of your agenda tonight.
Thank you.
James
Mr.
Vineyard,
Vineyard?
2401 Canal Drive. Just a couple of issues. We've heard constantly about shrinking the three commissions into one and how it's going to shrink the community's input. Now, if someone has a misdemeanor, say, driving without a license when they're in their 17, 18, 19, and now they become a model citizen and they're in their 50s or 60s, and they want to apply for this commission, perhaps they're going to be a little tentative to apply because of that misdemeanor charge that they have on there. So they aren't going to want to come in and input and be on part of this committee because they don't want that just put out in public notice. So you're going to restrict a few people from actually applying because we've never done this in the past. You've never required that in the past. I also have a little question on your on the application, and maybe I missed it a bit, but it says here, if I have an ongoing duty to inform the city clerk of the conviction if they're convicted no more than 24 hours after the conviction, I will automatically vacate my position upon conviction. It's a misdemeanor, so my question is, why would they have to abdicate their position on that committee if it's only a misdemeanor? And there are a wide variety of misdemeanors in all the CVC, PC, health and safety codes. So
Understood, sir, and just to answer through the chair, this is language that we've now talked about refining in view of Councilmember Rivero's comments, and we will do that.
Eric Lee, 1199 Atwater Boulevard. I find it interesting that after all the years that Atwater's had commissions, committees, oversight boards and everything, now we're concerned about somebody who might have a misdemeanor. I might understand felony, but I don't really understand misdemeanor. I didn't realize it had become such a problem. The other thing that I have an issue with is the councilman's last comment about a live scan. Frank can probably shed some light on this, but that's not an inexpensive procedure. And is the city going to pay to live scan each and every appointee, or is that something that the person who's appointed will have to pay for out of their pocket?
Is that, what's...
The cost ranges anywhere from $75 to $355.
Yeah, that's what I thought. And those of us that have had a live scan, I wonder how current that requirement then would be, because mine is a little over a year old. So I just wondered if that qualifies or if there's going to be a time frame. In other words, if I had a live scan for my CCW or for some other secure position that I'm involved in, and I've had it recently, would I be able to use that as a qualifying live scan, or would I have to have another live scan?
You would need another one.
And I find it interesting that certain members of the council who are so concerned about costs of training someone to operate a ladder truck don't seem to be concerned about other costs. And the public needs to understand that. Where this is coming from, this is purely political. This isn't going to make a better commission. It's not going to make a better Atwater. It's just a political ploy. And so I think this council needs to think about that. I think the citizens of Atwater deserve that much.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who wishes to come forward and speak? Seeing none, we'll bring it back to the dais. And do we have any more comments on this item? If we have no further comments on the, pardon me, Councilman Bergman?
Well, I just have a question, because there's been a lot of items brought up and changes, before we vote on anything, wouldn't it be prudent to bring the changes back so we can actually see the changes before we vote on it? Because there's been a lot of things that we've wanted changed.
Yeah, except for that. Yeah,
But I do understand there is a time frame because we are needing to,
right.
yeah.
Let me, if I could, just attempt to summarize the proposed changes. You have the ordinance that's, or I'm sorry, the two resolutions that are in front of you, and we know from the introduction to this item that item I3 will be taken out, and that it will be taken out of the application as well. And that in its place, the candidates would be required to disclose any misdemeanor or felony convictions. That's fairly clear. There's nothing that says that a prior conviction of a misdemeanor or a felony disqualifies either from applying or from being a commissioner. So that's fairly clear. Councilmember Rivero would like to add three things, as I see it, to this to each of the resolutions. One would say that no individual can serve on more than one board or commission. Secondly, that on the application, the applicants would be required to list their specific experience in the area for which they're applying. So if they apply for recreation and planning and traffic, the resource commission, as we would call it, then they would have to disclose their specific experience in those areas. If it's for another commission, it'd be whatever experience they have to bring to bear there. And then the third would be that any person that is appointed by the council would be subject to a live scan. And we haven't really specified whether it would how recent it would need to be, but presumably it would need to be something that we would administer upon their appointment. So those are the three. The first changes we knew we were going to make. The other three are no more than one commissioner board, list their experience, and be subject to a live scan. Those are the three revisions that we see. And from a staff standpoint, we feel we can make those if they have the support of the full council or of a majority of the council, but certainly it's within your prerogative to continue this if you want to do that. The concern from the staff standpoint is we want to make sure we get this process completed so that we can meet the timelines that are set out in our ordinance to get this done.
Okay, we have Jeff Rivero, followed by Councilman Bergman.
Now, I was going to ask the city attorney and stop me where I've gone too far, but I can ask the chief of police. I believe you were assistant chief of police back just a few years ago when the city council appointed somebody that had some issues, and we spent many hours of attorney fees, and also the chief of police at the time spent a lot of time investigating an issue. Now, I won't use any names, but that has been an issue for the city council not too long ago. So what I'm trying to do is save costs to the city, that we make sure that we take care of everything we need to take care of before we put someone on a committee, because once you put them on a committee, it's going to be very expensive to take them off. So, do you recall?
Yeah, I recall
City
that.
manager?
I cannot discuss any of the circumstances, but I recall the
But you
incident.
recall that?
Yeah.
So that's what, there was staff time and also time from the attorney that was spent on that, and I don't want to go into any further detail. And the other thing I was going to ask Mr. Terpstra to make sure you said board, commission, and I'd also like to include committee.
Committee?
Board, commission, and committee.
Committee too? Can I? Okay. Okay, Councilman Bergman?
I wanted to expand a little bit on the live scan. You know, because it's come up, but is the city going to be responsible for paying for it? You know, as,
It's council's choice. We could, city could pay for it, we could have the individual pay for it.
personally, I'm in favor of all the items that the councilman brought forward, but, you know, he brought up an issue earlier about costs and that, and I'm not in favor of any additional cost at this point to be added to it. I'd be in favor of approving this with the exclusion of the live scan at this point. I don't think it's fair to ask the applicants to pay for it, and at you know, your own you just said that, it's close to $300
Could
per
be.
individual.
Could
It
be.
could be, so, I mean, it adds up. Every little penny adds up, and my 2 cents, I would be in favor of this if that wasn't included. I'm in favor of all the other items that the councilman brought forward. Just my 2 cents.
Any other, pardon me, Councilman Jeff Rivero?
I recently had a live scan done in Livingston, and I believe it was $45. And I know that the Junior Giants live scans every single person if they're going to go out in that field to have a live scan. So I don't think any of them paid $350 a person, but I don't know how much detailed the more expensive ones
Yeah,
are.
it depends.
But is there any way that
The
we?
coaches, I don't mean to interrupt, I'm sorry. The coaches are about $45 to $60. Junior Giants, we have a contract with DOJ, and all those organizations get it at a better price. They get a little bit, some money off on it.
My whole thing was to try to cut down on the expense on the city for city attorney and staff time when their issue pops up, because one issue alone runs you probably 5 to 10, maybe even 20 or 30 live scans. But if there's an issue with that and cost, I'm willing to take that off for now.
One compromise that you might consider on that point is that leaving it in the discretion of the city manager, if you're dealing with an appointee to a commission, a committee, or a board that has the potential for interaction with children, for example, or members of the public, maybe in those cases you give the discretion to the city manager to require a live scan at city expense at his discretion. But in most cases, you don't have those individuals. So you can do it in certain cases for good cause. Maybe that's the kind of language you could add, and then you'd cover the cases where you need to do it, but not everybody on a blanket basis. And since the city manager is also your police chief, he has pretty good
Yeah,
nose
pretty
for
good
that sort of
training.
thing. So that might be a way to amend this and make it
Makes sense.
palatable for everybody.
According to, we could just say with the.
City
approval.
manager for good cause may require a live
cause.
scan at city
Okay.
expense.
Okay, Councilman Joe Rivero?
No, thank you, Madam Mayor. No, I'd like the city's attorney's wording on that. But when we're creating this, that some would call the super committee, where you have less individuals, but now it's going to include Parks and Rec, where sometimes the children are involved, I think more so, and the parents are coming there. So that's just my concern when you're saying the city manager's discretion. So what, he has to hear something first and then he decides on an individual and then not others? I don't see how, I mean, in a lot of cases, there's people that have kept it hidden and you wouldn't know. So, I mean, I hear some out there saying let's take the side of the ones that have committed criminal acts, but I think that we should need to take the side of those, of utmost for the innocents out there that haven't, so.
And Councilmember, you may be right in that, and the city manager in his discretion may, after consulting with the RMA, for example, the Risk Management Authority, may decide that they need to do all of them because that's a recommendation from our risk management folks. So this just gives them the discretion to do it if that's something that is prudent for the city. So I think that's an appropriate way to handle it.
And since PAL has an agreement that's only $45, and since this is a city, which the city supports PAL, I can't see why we would be charged more than an organization that we're actually endorsing and supporting. So I mean, is there a possibility that we would have the same kind of $45 deal?
PAL is a nonprofit organization. Nonprofit organizations get a better deal than cities do. Believe me. Madam Mayor, if I may,
Yes.
Councilman Jeffrey, you're advocating doing a background on these individuals? A
No, I'm
complete
just-
background?
No, I'm asking for, are you talking about live scan background?
Right. Yeah, I mean, a complete life scan background on top of a actual physical background as we do when we
No,
hire
I'm-
employees?
I'm asking for, on the application, that it simply says, if you've had any issues with the law, misdemeanor, felony, and it's not to exclude them, and if they've had an issue, then they can explain to the council. Two major things that I've thought of is that on Parks and Recreation, if somebody has done something that we don't want with children, as a voting member of a council, I'd like to know what issues they had, and then also, if you're doing planning commission, if they've had issues with the law when it comes to building or safety codes or whatever, that's something else that I'd like to know. So I'm just basically asking for it on the application, and on most applications, it used to be that if you did not put down your misdemeanor felony, there was grounds to dismiss you on the spot. And that's, all I'm trying to do is protect the cities, that the city has a easy way to get rid of somebody that has basically lied on the application. And not trying to dig up bones, but the city as a appointing body needs to know what issues you have in your background, because we definitely don't want you working for the city and then that surfacing like it has before. So I'm basically asking for any information and explain it at your interview. And then after you've been hired, you're talking 7 people times $45, and it might be more, but that's roughly $315, and I'm sure we spent more money on that than staff and attorney for our last issue. So I'm just trying to save money up front for the city and protect it. But if live scan is the do or die, then let's leave it up to the city manager to investigate to see what's best for the city.
That's reasonable.
That's fine, Mayor.
That's fine. Councilman Bergman?
I was just going to state, having been through several different live scans for different reasons, is there are different levels. And 45 is the lowest level, but depending on what level we would need to go, depending on what they put on their application, it could be up. So it's you can't really go and say it's just $45, but if you're willing to, if you're willing to let the city manager have the final discretion. Okay, thank you.
Are we ready for bring this, a motion for this item? Motion, and Mr. Jeff Rivera, are you ready for a motion?
Yes, I'd like to make a motion
Okay.
for resolution number 2788-14 with the amendments that the city attorney has already gone over.
Okay. Is that thorough enough, Mr. Terpstra?
Yes, it is.
Okay.
Well,
Uh,
I'll second that.
Second
with-
that?
What about the second resolution?
We'll do that
in
one
there?
separate.
You're going to do that separate?
Can we separate that, or do you need?
You can do them together if you'd like. It's council's discretion. If you want to add the second
One
resolution.
question I had on the mosquito abatement, and I'm asking for the city's protection, are we exposed at all with having somebody service even though we voted not to have them on? Because I don't want city exposure. And if I'm
Well,
not supposed to ask
yeah.
that, then I withdraw my question. But-
I think it's covered. I think we will be covered on that.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so we're combining the two then, sir?
If the maker of the motion wants to do that, we can
And
combine
I'll
it.
add an amendment to also accept resolution number 2789-14.
Okay.
I was going to second with an amendment to also include committee. That was brought up by.
Right.
Yeah, we did.
Right, we
Okay,
did include
okay.
committee. Okay, so we combine both this mosquito abatement and the super committees into one. Is that correct? Both resolutions? Okay. Call for the question.
Jeff Rivera,
Yes.
Bergman,
Yes.
Joe Rivera.
Yes.
Fall.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Number 8, contract amendment number 5 with MCON for water supply assessment for the Ferrari Ranch. City-
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Member. AECom is the engineering firm that is providing on-call general engineering services and acting as the lead civil engineer for the city on the Ferrari Ranch project. There is a water supply assessment that is a part of the environmental process that is being undertaken because of some potential complications with the Meadowbrook Water Company, who claims the right to serve this project. It has been decided that we should do the water supply assessment for both, as if it were coming from both agencies, both the city of Atwater and Meadowbrook Water Company, so that all the bases are covered. All costs related to these engineering services, which we're estimating at about $12,000, are going to be paid by Ferrari Ranch per the reimbursement agreement. So there's really no additional cost to the city at this point. It's just a way of covering that additional water supply assessment cost. So it's here for your approval, and staff's recommendation is that it be approved.
Okay, do we have any questions of the city attorney before I open it up to the audience? Okay, seeing none from the dais, we'll open it up to the audience. If any person wishes to come forward and comment on the contract for the water supply assessment for the Ferrari Ranch development. Please come forward, state your name and address, and you have 3 minutes. Seeing none, we'll bring it back to the council, and if we do not have any further discussion, I'll entertain a motion. Councilman Jeff Rivero.
I'd like to make a motion to approve contract amendment number 5 with AECOM for a water supply assessment consistent with SB 610 for the Ferrari Ranch Development Project.
Second.
Second by Councilman Bergman. Do we have any further discussion? Call for the question.
Joe Rivero.
Yes.
Jeff Rivero.
Yes.
Bergman.
Yes.
Fall.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Item number 9, recognize the obligation payment schedule. And who is going to do the ROPS? The city attorney?
Clean sweep, Madam Mayor. Okay, the recognized obligation payment schedule, you're now acting in your capacity as the successor agency to the Atwater Redevelopment Agency. So in that capacity, staff is recommending that the successor agency adopt the resolution number SA 2014-8, which recognizes and approves the ROPS schedule 2014-15B for the January 1, 2015 through June 30th, 2015 period. Now, this is a familiar document to you because you've adopted this several times before for previous periods. Essentially, the successor agency, with the approval of the Oversight Committee, has to make certain payments that are part of the ongoing responsibilities of the former redevelopment agency. And so in summary, you're going to be requesting a total of about $837,000 of redevelopment property trust fund taxes that were distributed by the county to fund ongoing obligations of the former redevelopment agency. These include bond debt services, bond administration, disclosure costs, employee costs, and disposition activities. Now, there are no capital improvement projects that are part of this, so this is just ongoing debt service, ongoing employment obligations, and so it's fairly straightforward. There's nothing additional or new than what you've done previously. So with that, staff is recommending approval of the resolution that is attached.
Do we have any questions of the city attorney before I open it up to the public? Okay, we'll open it up to the public. Is there anyone who wishes to come forward and discuss the ROP organization? Seeing none, we'll bring it back to the dais, and if there's no more questions on this matter, we'll entertain a motion for approval or a motion. Councilman Jeff Rivero.
I'd like to make a motion to adopt resolution number SA 2014-8, approving the recognized obligation payment schedule for ROPS 2014-15B for the January 2015 through June 30, 2015 period.
Second.
We have a second by Mr. Bergman. Do we have any further discussion? Call for the question.
Jeff Rivero.
Yes.
Bergman.
Yes.
Joe Rivero.
Yes.
Fall.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Okay, item number 10 has been pulled, so we'll move to item number 11, verbal report regarding PG&E utility rates. Mr. Shaw?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you, Council. I guess it was brought to the attention that some of the PG&E rates have been changed. PG&E, we have a customer service representative that annually or biannually goes through and looks at all of our rates, what power we've used, and he gets us to the best rate to save the city the most money. The different rates depends on time of use, demand charge, standby fees, stuff like that. So I don't know what it is what else you need to know on changing the rates to save the city money.
Mr. Jeff Ferrero, what were your concerns on this matter?
My concern is that with the solar that we had going in, we had reported numbers. And then at an open meeting, Mr. Bergman reported out some numbers that we were truly being charged. What the problem is that we gave a company numbers to run their numbers off of, and then switch those numbers without letting the city manager know that we were switching it, or the company that we were asking to run numbers. So when they come and they report to you their numbers, and you say, well, wait a minute, these numbers aren't accurate, that's because the city changed the numbers without notifying anybody. So that creates a problem in the chain of command and also information that the city's getting. Second thing is that we switched well 15 from an AB to a E19XX, which also then changes your EMT report. So I was going to ask you, for all the sites that we are putting solar on, can the whole staff get an EMT report from what Conergy was originally given up to the present date? So whatever time frame we gave them to do the numbers, and I'm sure that we've had complaints before that the whole staff didn't get it, so I'm going to ask for all 5 council members to get the information. But I'd like for each site that the council receives an EMT report, and it should be straight through, except for each one of them should be able to give you that site straight through, except for well site 15, because 15 rate change happened, and then when you rate change it, it also gives you a different ID number. So we'll need 2 different ID numbers. So each one of the sites, we need a CMT, the rest of them should be, and also if we can forward that to Conergy to ask them to come in here and do a presentation on the numbers that we are currently doing, not the numbers that we gave them originally.
You just want to know the amount of energy, the kilowatt hours?
The amount of energy also, and also the electric charges in dollars, because you need that to be able to say this is how much you're saving.
Okay, are you, because Mr. Bergman has a question.
Okay, so you stated we have an individual with PG&E that reviews our rates every year or every 2 years, and then they bring them forward for us to change, to give us the ability to change the rates to get a cheaper rate.
Yes.
In the past, when they've come forward with these rates, who have they reported to?
Public Works.
So they've gone right to Public Works, and Public Works has signed the agreements to change the rates.
Yes, we're the ones that pay the utility bills down there, so
Right.
we try to get the best rate we can for the city.
Okay. Okay, because it was brought forward before that it was the responsibility of the city manager, and I just wanted clarification as to who did that. And secondly, I don't know as much on the solar as Councilman Rivero does, but to me, I find it a little irrelevant as what, we gave them numbers at what the well used. To me, it was up to the solar company to give us the best price they possibly could, irrelevant of what we spent in the past. So they should have brought, as far as I'm concerned, they brought us the best numbers at what they're, the best rate they can give the city. And the rates we're getting charged now are so much cheaper. I think it's irrelevant as to what level we're being, what SE we're being charged at now. So thank you for doing
Yes.
the work and bringing that forward.
And it could be, the rates could be changed back to whatever you want when the solar comes in, but we're just trying to save the most amount of money right now.
And I totally understand it and I agree with it. The only problem is that it wasn't communicated, and I'm not saying it's your fault, but the city did not communicate that. So, and if I can explain it in gasoline, if we were buying gasoline from Station A at $4 a gallon, and then Station B gave it to us for $3 a gallon, and Conergy came in and said, we're going to sell it to you for $2.75, well, your savings is going to be different than when you're shopping at Station A or if you're shopping at Station B. So your savings is going to be a little bit different. And then when it comes to the EX19, that's not a solar friendly. You want, when you go to do a solar on your meters, you want the most solar friendly numbers, and that would be A6. A6, as we pump it on, and don't quote me on the exact number, but I think we get 3 times more. It's like 55 cents a kilowatt as we're pumping it on. And then we're on off-peak, because we're paying by the time period of the day, then we're using it at a much cheaper rate. So that's basically how, when you come to the different charges or the rate schedule that you're on, and yes, we can switch back to A6, but I'm confused, and maybe you can help me out here. On well 13, we're A6, and we're still A6, and the electric charges for well 15, and that's when we're talking about going solar, it was $7,000, $11,000, $11,000, $8,000. And on well 13, we still stayed A6 on that. We didn't switch that one over. And that one's $10,000, $5,000, $9,000, $5, 9, 7. So it's still an extreme amount, but we didn't switch that off of A6 to E19, and I was simply asking, is there a chance that we can switch these?
Well 13 was just switched.
So, because the EMT report that I have goes from 520 of 14 all the way back to 719 and 13, and that one was on A6.
Yeah, it just got changed about a month ago.
So if the rest of the staff wants it, is there a chance that for our wells, can we get 2 different things? One, can we get the EMT reports from all of our water wells? And then the second thing is to let us know what the water is being pumped at each one of these wells? How much water at each well that we're pumping? And the reason I'd like to know that is because we've asked people to conserve, and I see a lot of grasses out there that aren't green. So I believe the citizens in Atwater are doing a very good job, and I'd like to know how much they've conserved, so that way we can tell them thank you for helping out the city of Atwater.
You want total water pumped?
Like to get the CMT reports from our water wells, and then a water, how much is being pumped from each one of those wells.
Well, that's what I'm asking. You want it for per day or per month?
If you, the CMTs go per month, so why don't we go water per month if you don't mind, if that's doable? We used to get those at our public works meetings, and so I was used to seeing them, and I'd just like to see one because it's been a while.
Yeah, that's not a problem.
Okay, so Mr. Shaw, can you bring this kind of back and bring it up to, at the next meeting, and would just do the best you can, okay?
Yes, no,
That comes, you've got a few other items that are a little bit, so we appreciate everything you do. I tell you, you do a fantastic job in all of the requests that we ask of you, and we do want to thank you.
And you just want the EMT reports for the wells?
So I'd like the EMT reports for where we're going solar
Oh, just for the solar?
for the last 4 years, and PG&E will send you that report on request. And the second thing is if we can get our water wells, because I don't have that. If you shoot me the meter numbers for all of our water meters, I'll be more than glad to do that legwork for you and shoot PG&E and ask them for the CMT reports on that. And if you want to do it yourself, fine, but also on the how much water is being pumped from each one of our wells.
Okay.
It's been 2 or 3 years since Dave reported at a public works meeting, but he was saying that we are extremely low on water pressure. So I'd like to see what we're pumping out. Hopefully, People's Conservation has helped us out on our water pressure. And then, once again, I'd like to tell the people of Atwater that we've saved X amount of millions of gallons over a month because of their conservation. The people are really doing a good job out there, and I'd like to let them know
Yes.
exactly how well they're doing.
Yeah, I've noticed a big difference during the day. We've only had 2 or 3 wells running to where in the middle of summer we used to have 5 or 6.
And I appreciate the work that you guys are doing on the water. I know that we're down on staff, and you guys are hustling and also taking care of water violators, and there's a lot of things on your back, so we appreciate it, but at the same time, I'd like to let people
Okay,
know thank you.
thank you, Mr. Shaw. Okay, moving on, Mr. Rivero, the Junior Giants Day. Now, how are we? I thought we already recognized Junior Giants. We recognized the young people and the parents and the coaches. What exactly do you want for this day?
I'd like to do a Junior Giants Day usually when the junior giants kick off in our town, they've spent hundreds of thousands of dollars for our
Okay, but
kids.
what day, is it the end of the Junior Giants program or the
can-
beginning of the program?
Can we do it the first week of June? Because that's usually when they kick off, and they might not kick off on June
First
1.
week?
So if we can do the first week of June, declaring it Junior Giants Week.
I didn't think they started that early. I thought
I
they
asked
were...
Mr. Hammer.
They were after the regular season, like starting the end of July, beginning of August, after the regular seasons were, but I could be mistaken.
I asked Jeff
We'll check
Hammer.
with Jeff.
I asked him already, and he said the first week would be good, because that's usually when they start.
Okay, the first week in June.
Yes, ma'am.
So when, you don't want to go a week, do you? How about the first, how about the second week, and then we can do, and at our kick it off at our city council meeting?
I'm just telling you, Jeff said the first week, but if you'd like to do it the second, you know more
Well, it
than me.
doesn't matter to me, but, so how are we going to do that if we, are we going to have
I think we just declare the
declare
first
it?
week of June as Junior Giants Day in the city. I don't think we
Okay.
have to do anything more than that, but
Okay.
I'm just trying to appreciate
Oh, I
the
agree.
fact that how much the Junior Giants have done for our kids over the last,
Oh,
I believe
yeah.
it's 12 years.
I would agree with that.
And then
Okay,
on-
so the first week in June is, okay, that would be, say, June 2nd or June 1st then? First would be June 1st, 2015?
The
Be
first
June
week of
Giant
June,
Week?
starting on June 1.
That's, what?
The
Right.
first week of June, starting June 1st.
Yeah, first week in June, starting June 1st.
There you
Is
go.
is that a motion?
That's a motion.
That's a motion. I'll second it. Let's move along. June, yes, June 1st day. Yep. And that's June 15th. That's a motion by Mr. What? Well, we did, the first week in June and the June 1st. Starting, oh, jeez. Okay, I second that thing. Okay, any further question? Call for the question.
Mr. Bergen has a question.
Up. Mr. Bergman?
I'm just a little
You can't
concerned.
be confused, Mr.
No,
Bergman.
I'm not confused, I'm concerned. We've got several wonderful youth organizations in this city, and we're singling out one to give them a special week. What about the Boy Scouts? What about the Girl Scouts? What about these other organizations that do wonderful for our kids? I'm just a little concerned that we're just picking one and recognizing one when we have several good volunteers in this city that run these other programs, and they're being overlooked. And if we recognize every group and give them a week, we're going to have a different week every week of the year, recognizing a different group. And that kind of takes the meaning out of it at that point.
True. Okay, Mr. Joe Rivero.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Mayor. I think that the city has at different times honored different organizations. I know the Cub Scouts, when it was being led by Ivy Cooper, that they placed in a really nice rose garden, and because they did that over there by city property, the school district decided to go ahead and they would supply the area, and the city provided them with some certificates, and actually at that time, we had a public works committee, we had organized a thing for community involvement, and the students, or not students, but the members of the Cub Scouts all received awards. I know the Boy Scouts have received awards through the city when they've been participating in everything from our entrance where they maintain the flower area. So I don't see anything wrong with honoring a group, and then if we have other ideas to honor the Boy Scouts during Boy Scouts Week, if that's already in, and the Cub Scouts during their date, and which I don't know off the top of my head, where they originated, I think that would be fine as well. I think also we have to look at what PAL's done. I mean, in the past, they were talking about placing in ball fields in the communities, and I think that if you're showing your appreciation to them, they may stop and look and say, look what Atwater's doing. We're doing a lot for your children. How are you honoring the kids and stuff and the organization, the people that are leaders? And I think that that's good, because in the future, and they've given a lot to this community, and members of this community have given a lot to that organization. So I think that if you keep this bond going, that it will continue. Now, the United States has days of all kinds of days that are in it. The United States of America have designated different days, not that we celebrate them, but that they're on the books. And I think that's fine to show that they're being recognized. And I think you have a good point there. Let's, if we haven't already honored the Cub Scouts in a way, maybe we can take a look at that.
Scouting.
Some of those different issues. So I see nothing wrong with this. I think that this is perhaps the first step then, if you'd like to see more, and I think that'd be great.
We also do the youth baseball. We have that parade that we have at the beginning, or I think it's the end of March. We have a big parade for them. So we try to honor, if the people come forward and ask to be recognized, we try to recognize all of the different groups that we have going in the city. So, Mr. Joe Rivera.
And I'd just like to add, too, the AYB, we've honored right up here, too, on
yeah.
the council dais. And
Right.
and my son's played for both the PAL and the AYB, and I think they're both great organizations. And we might look at doing something for their day as well.
We did the Junior Giants up here last meeting as well.
Right,
Yeah, we
right.
did.
That's what I'm saying, is
Yeah.
that I don't see anything wrong with this. I think
Right.
it's a positive thing, and the major organizations can take a look at, hey, we're
Okay, so-
honoring everybody.
Right. So we have a motion on the floor.
good.
We have a second. And the motion is, City Clerk? Would you please read the motion?
Motion is to designate the first week of June, starting with June 1st, as Junior Giants Day in the city of Atwater.
Okay. And that was a motion by Mr. Jeff Rivero?
Yes.
And a second by Ms. Fall?
Yes.
Okay. And I'll call for the question.
Bergman,
Abstain.
Jeff Rivero,
Yes.
Joe Rivero,
Yes.
Fall?
Fall.
Yes.
Motion
Okay,
carries.
moving on. Okay, we've already talked about the Blocentennial celebration. That's going to be the 26th of September, and we really want to thank Kathy Jensen, Greg Ozak, and all the people who are on that wonderful historical committee. And so let's move down then to starting with Mr. Bergman. Council comments and requests.
Nothing to report.
Okay. We'll go to Joe Rivero.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I have nothing to report.
Okay. And then we'll go to Jeff Rivero.
Just wanted to tell all our staff members, especially our new ones that are on, welcome to you, and very proud of, the whole council is very proud of all of our staff members, and I know we're down in numbers, but people are really busting tail to get their jobs done, and we really appreciate it. Thank you.
Okay, I just want to thank our friend Linda Dash and all of the work that she did in putting together the pageant that she put together with her staff in Merced, and one of her winners then went on to Miss California, and now she's going on to Atlantic City to go in the Miss America pageant, and that's Marina Era, and so we wish her luck, and yes, and I want to thank Linda for all of her efforts in putting all that pageant together. That is a wonderful thing, and now she's moving on, so we'll keep our fingers crossed for her. Okay, we have the 9/11 program coming off on Thursday, and that will start at 6 o'clock right out here in the front of our City Hall, and we invite you all to come. And so we would like to, the music starts at 5:30, and then the program starts at 6. And with that, I would like to take this opportunity to adjourn our meeting in honor of Don Rogers. Don Rogers was a lifetime member of our community. He worked with Woods Fruit Company for years, has been in the Veterans Associations and to the Methodist Church, and his family has been a part of our community. And so our prayers and thoughts go out to he and his family at this time. And with that, we adjourn the meeting in his honor. Thank you.
Oh, okay. RS? Okay. We'll look it up.
It'll be in the paper today.
Okay.
You want us to fix the application?
Yes,
We have the
please.
application?
You do.